Welcome to the Fresh RN podcast. The information contained in this podcast is meant to supplement your existing knowledge and not replace it. Always refer to your state board of nursing, standards of care, and respective institutions' policies to guide your practice. All identifying patient details have been changed to protect their privacy and remain compliant with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. Thanks, nurses. Stay fresh. People are usually cranky, mean, lazy, frustrating, or whatever.
Sounds like bed 3's beeping.
Hearing our voice when we explain what happened to a person who has bed 2 who's sitting down goes in a direction. Dr. Brene Brown, what?
Thought I was stupid. I mean, there's a reason that term nurses eat their young is out there.
Like, screw that, man. That's crap. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fresh RN podcast. I am Katie Kleber.
Hey, I'm Elizabeth Mills.
And I am Melissa Stafford.
And today we're going to talk about dealing with a negative unit culture, bullies, and confrontation. So when I went into nursing, I thought that all nurses were like super caring, wonderful people, but that nurses are people and some people aren't that nice.
We eat our young and
it's delicious. No, I was kidding.
It's delicious.
Just totally kidding. I don't do
fresh
that.
nurse
Fresh
meat.
RN.
Fresh RN meat.
And we're kidding. We don't do that. So, I truly believe that negative unit cultures exist because there are informal leaders on units and they kind of create, continue, and perpetuate negativity. When you're brand new, it's really hard to step into that unit, learn and learn how to be a safe nurse and be a part of that, and because part of you wants to fit in and make friends and build rapport with people so they'll help you out, because nursing is a team sport. And if you walk in and it's already really negative, that's just a really hard place to be. So we wanted to give you some practical tips to deal with this because it's quite the real reality. And we're going to get super nitty gritty here, not just like report to the appropriate person. Like, yeah, that's nice, but that's not how this really goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're just gonna kind of walk through some very practical things. So the first thing I want to encourage you to do, no matter actually even if it's negative or not, is whenever you start on a unit, just really observe the culture and the flow and the relationships of everybody on the unit. You can probably quickly identify who the informal leaders are. How do they treat people? What makes them tick? When do you see them really passionate and really engaged? And what do they enjoy?
Passionate in a good way, engaged in a good way, or
Either.
Okay.
I think it's that's one thing I like to notice is if I notice somebody's negative, when are they talking about something that's not
when
negative?
are they negative?
Yeah, notice when they're negative. Notice when they're positive and what makes them positive. Like what makes that negative person light up?
Okay.
It's something I like to mentally keep note of, and I'll talk about that in a minute why. Because, and also I think it's important too, like negative cultures aren't these everyday, these people come in and say horrible things. It's very subtle, very consistent, very like low profile negativity.
Like crabgrass.
Yes. Yes. That's not what I was like thinking you were gonna say, and then that
it just
was
kind of
I know what he's
slithers.
thinking.
It's a snake. It's a snake in
Yes,
the grass.
it is. It is slithery,
Low profile.
low profile, but it's very powerful.
It's infectious and ridiculously hard
Dangerous
to get rid of.
venom.
Yes.
It's
It
hard to kill.
But so, anyways,
We have a really good, positive, fun culture in our little unit.
we do, but and which is wonderful.
Some
It
of the
is.
time.
It is wonderful though to be in that. But so I basically want to encourage you at the end, observe kind of what's going on, not like kind of objectively outside of it. Just see kind of how the dynamics flow. I think it's important. And I also like to pay attention to kind of those informal leaders that have a profound influence. Is just what are they like as a person, not just as a nurse, but what are they like as a person? What is their home life? Are they supported at home? Are they calling out all the time? Or are they working all the time because they're very financially stressed? Or, those kinds of things I like to just pay attention to. And then I want to encourage you also to kind of reflect about yourself. So think about how maybe you might be perceived. How do you respond when you're corrected, which happens a lot when you're in orientation? How do you ask questions when you're not sure if what's happening is right. How do you communicate that in a respectful way? And do a mental self-inventory and when you're experiencing these negative situations. So, and give those feelings a name is what I really want to encourage you to do. So like maybe whenever I get report from Elizabeth, I feel really inadequate. Or whenever Katie talks to me, whenever Katie talks about other people, I feel really insecure because I think she talks about me like that. Or whenever I come to Melissa with a question, she's really short with me and I feel stupid, like she doesn't have the time for me or something. It's important to identify those feelings. Because that kind of helps you step outside of the situation a little bit. And it's important to make decisions and actions not based off of emotions. And if you're able to identify them and kind of step outside of the situation for a second and then respond, that's helpful, I think.
That is, I think, probably the biggest point that you can make. I think that was very well said, is that you have to separate emotion from what is going on. If the person that you're dealing with is keyed up with emotion and you are keyed up with emotion, it's going to be very difficult to come to some sort of resolution.
Or hear each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's something I want that you can do for yourself. You can't force this upon anyone else, them figuring out their emotional stuff, but it's helpful as a nurse to work on emotional intelligence. I think to be a successful nurse, you have to have a degree of emotional intelligence. And that means that you are able to feel something without having to act upon it.
Emotional intelligence, though, that's just not something that comes about overnight.
Right. It takes time.
I used to have to actually do because I used to be somebody that I would get so sensitive if I felt like someone was, didn't like me or, and I came across this at work many times, but, thought I was stupid or, I literally had to take a journal and say, what is it? What do I do that makes me think that they think I'm stupid? Like I had to literally, I had to write down a ton of stuff. Why would I think that they think I'm stupid? Like, what are some actual evidence, hard evidence? And I would come up with nothing because I'm not stupid.
Right.
I'm just
right.
kidding. But
No, you're
it
not.
does help. No, it does help. That's emotional intelligence. Like thinking in your mind, what is concrete evidence that shows I'm this way?
Right.
And typically there's nothing.
And the more that you can kind of step outside of the situation and have an objective perspective enables you to do that better because you're not wrapped up in that emotion. Because what's that emotion? It's insecurity. It's fear because you're worried about the way that they perceive you, what they think about you, and you want them to have a specific image or I guess an image or thought about who you are. And then if it's not that, then it's scary. And you feel insecure. So giving your feelings a name and if that means writing them down. Do what you got to do for yourself. Because that's all you can control, right? In all of this, no matter what, you cannot control the behavior of somebody else, but you can control your behavior, how you act, and what you can feel emotions. But what do you do with them? Another thing I want to encourage you to do is empathize. People are usually cranky, mean, lazy, frustrating, or whatever for a reason, right? Like, I don't know if I've ever met a really mean person who was just a mean person. Like, there's typically something's happened to that person where that is the way that they walk through life. And we want to empathize with our patients, even when they're being jerks. So we got to do that with each other. I think that's an important culture mentality that we have to.
How do you empathize?
You try
What's sympathize versus empathize?
Oh, yes, that's an important thing. I'll put a link to that video that I love. That Dr.
Brene
Brene Brown.
Brown.
What? So sympathy is I feel bad for you. Empathy is I feel bad with you. Like this sucks. Like I'm trying to imagine what it feels like to be a nurse with 3 kids and a husband that's not
Unemployed. And,
unemployed and not trying to
and you're
help
the
out,
breadwinner.
and you're picking up overtime, and no matter what, you're always behind, and you've got
And this is a
7
hard,
credit
scary
cards.
place to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking about that. Not that justifies any behavior, but just trying to have an idea of what it would be like to be in that situation.
Right.
Okay. So then I want to encourage you, like I said before, to be outside of the negativity, not within it. So let's say we're in a situation right now where, and I don't know why I was picturing the situation, sitting dictation room, and there's 5 nurses hanging out talking about how ridiculous the new graduate is. This new nurse, I can't believe they said this. How do they not know how to start an IV or whatever, you know? So when people around you start being negative, just don't participate. Disengage. So like, be silent. It's a little awkward. It's almost like that awkward empathy silence you do with your patients, but it's worth it. And
Yeah, it
pretty
totally
soon
is.
people figure out, okay, if I want to talk about somebody and I want to talk about how ridiculous the new grad is, I can't go to Elizabeth because it's not fun to talk about it with Elizabeth because she doesn't respond.
Misery loves company.
Right. So you don't want to be that person that grumpy person goes to talk about other people.
And let me just say, I am guilty of doing said things, and it's taken me kind of a while to change. I feel like I have changed kind of some of my behaviors with that, because it really does nothing to help out any situation at all.
Mhm.
And it just creates, I mean, in a way, it's kind of bullying.
It is.
You know, and it doesn't help morale in a unit. It doesn't help anything about it, about, you know, and people don't want to stay in situations like that.
No, that's causes turnover. People leave. And you know what? If you really are concerned about that new grad that doesn't know how to start an IV, go freaking teach them how to start an IV. Or if
Or
Well-
go to a higher, follow your chain of command.
yeah, I mean, if you're
Or go to their
actually
preceptor
concerned about safety,
and use objective information.
right? And don't, like, maybe they're a know-it-all. Maybe they're really frustrating. Yeah, that sucks to be around sometimes, but if you're truly concerned about safety and them not being an appropriate nurse for the unit, don't kick it in the dictation room and talk about how ridiculous it is. Go talk to whoever the appropriate chain.
With a concrete example of why you think they might be unsafe.
Right. Don't just say
Exactly.
I get a bad feeling. No, you can't just say I don't think they're cut out for this and think that the manager is going to do something about it. Another thing I like to do is if I'm in kind of a group situation, because that's when this stuff occurs, right? When there's a group
Yeah.
and it's hard to say
Very
something back because it's you're new. You don't want to ruffle feathers. You want to make friends. Everybody looks like they're having a good time. So I have this experience I remember very vividly, sitting in the dictation room, 4 or 5 nurses chatting about a new nurse, and every time they were saying something negative about this person, I brought up a positive thing.
Good for you.
And pretty
Yeah.
soon it was like, well, this isn't fun anymore to that, so that then it kind of slowly stifled the conversation. The counteracting really helps. And then something my husband's done before, because this isn't specific to nursing,
No.
but I've heard him do this before when we've been around people and that kind of chatter occurs. It's like he just casually will say man, I wonder what people say about me when I'm not here.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Real light, real casual, but it kind of is like, oh wait, what the hell are we doing, right?
Mhm.
So I like that one. It's a good talking point, I think.
I do. What do y'all say about me when I'm not here?
Right, and it's like,
That
You're-
puts people in their place.
It
in a
does.
very
Because I am not perfect.
Right.
I have a lot of flaws.
as we've spent our
So-
whole episode talking about mistakes, right?
Right.
We screw stuff up. One thing I like to do too is when I meet people and get used to in a culture and I meet people that are particularly negative, I like to get to know them like we talked about before. I don't want to shun them. I want to learn a little bit about them. And when I learn something about them that they like, that's not a negative thing. Maybe they're a real good storyteller, or maybe they really nerd out on Harry Potter like me. I'm going to bring that stuff up with them. And when we talk about that, I'm going to be real engaged with them about that. But whenever they talk negatively or talk about other people, I disengage. I'm not a fun person to talk to, but when we're talking about something not negative, I am. So that, eventually kind of like, okay, I can't talk about this crap with Katie because she's not going to respond to me. So that takes time. This isn't like an overnight thing. Something
And I think in some situations, if you are that person who doesn't engage in that kind of behavior, you may feel like the odd man out,
Mhm.
but it works. It takes time, but it does work.
It is worth it.
It is worth it. It is worth it, even for your own self, just to respect your own morals and integrity
Mhm.
and be who you are. I mean,
Because you think about it, right? If you play into that and you become part of this negative culture, even if that's not
you're
who you are,
belittling yourself.
you are. And like a lot of people, when they're in a new culture, they want a new nursing unit. They want to be accepted and do whatever the group is doing, because when you're brand new, you don't really know the dynamics of the group yet. So you would think that if Elizabeth is usually real mean, like I would think that somebody would have said something to her by now. And if I come in day 2 and I say something like, I don't want to ruffle too many feathers, right? But then it's different than if you're like taking part in it too. And then there's no change that can occur because that's just what happens.
It really only takes one person to start initiating change. So
Mhm.
if you
Mhm.
can be that one person to really disengage and not participate in that, I think you'll find that you'll actually notice that people will notice that
Mhm.
and maybe do kind of a self check
Yeah.
and really be like, I didn't really realize that I spoke about so and so like that, or I didn't really realize that I was being negative all the time. And
Right.
it's important to do that kind of self check too, but it does take a lot of guts, especially as a new person, to
Mhm.
be able to take a step back from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things too, I should have said this earlier, but if someone's negative and someone's mean or someone's a bully, like they might not realize they are. Like they might not realize that they're being
That may
mean.
be how they were treated when they were a student nurse, or that may
Right.
be,
That might be what they think is normal.
yeah.
And they might not realize, hey, I sound kind of mean when I communicate blank.
I mean, there's a reason that term "nurses eat their young" is out there,
Mhm.
because we are, I think, a culture sometimes of being kind of really hard on new
Sink or
people.
swim. You
Yeah.
prove to me that you can be
Yeah.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
that's got to change.
it does. It does. And I think if people take, these little steps into changing the tide of the negative culture
Well,
to positive.
and I'll use a personal example for me. I mean, I had a newer nurse tell me one day, "I am so scared to give you a report." I'm like, "Really? Why?" I'm afraid I'm not going to know something. I'm like, "That's okay.
Mhm.
I don't expect you not to know.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't expect you to know everything." Really? You're scared? It really blew my mind that they were really that worried about giving me a report, because number one, I know I'm speaking with somebody who's new.
Mhm.
So when I'm getting a report, if I'm not getting the information that I need, or I think I need to point something out they didn't know,
Mhm.
my goal is to use that as a teaching moment,
Mhm.
not as a moment to make you feel incompetent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It really kind of was an eye-opening experience for me, that I'm like, I had absolutely no idea that's how you felt when you were giving me a report. And I
Isn't-
try to be very conscious of that.
And that's where kind of going into, as a new nurse, into these units, don't have these unrealistic expectations that you kind of need to realize that you're not going to know everything.
Mhm.
And a lot of, and asking questions in report, or asking that new nurse questions in report. Generally, I do it too, to kind of get their thought process going.
Right.
Right.
Not
And
to.
and I don't, a new nurse just said, it's like, please don't hate me if I don't include everything. And I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Why would I hate you?
It's really okay.
It's a very personal statement. I would never hate you for not knowing
my
every little
goodness.
thing.
I
I
want
know,
you to
and
do
I
well.
feel bad. I know, and I'm like, yeah, I want you to do well, and I want you to.
It's funny. We're getting ready. Like someone's giving us report. Or a new nurse is talking to us, and we're getting ready, and we want to extend grace to them, and they're terrified that they just know we're going to judge them. But
Yeah.
we've got like ample grace ready to provide that
Right.
and say, actually, you know what, blank, blank, blank.
Don't forget about.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, if I get corrected, I'm a bad nurse.
Not at
You know, and
all.
I want to make sure you
No.
understand that too. And one of the next things I want to encourage you to do is be unapologetic about being positive. Don't think you've got to be be like the storm cloud to fit in. Like, screw that, man. That's crap. Like,
Be a rainbow in someone's cloud.
oh my God.
That's
silver
my
lining.
Angelou. That's my Angelou.
Is it?
Yeah, that's my New Year's resolution. Be a rainbow in the clouds.
I can't tell if you're joking. Or
I'm not joking.
Don't you
I'm
feel
not.
terrible for laughing at her right now?
Yes.
That's
yes.
Be a rainbow in someone's cloud.
The way you're saying it.
I didn't want to
rainbow.
misquote it wrong. And
Sorry.
misquote it wrong. That's like That's double
quite,
negative.
It's quite redundant. But, you know, like, one of the things that, you know, if one of the informal leaders, you know, if you're getting involved in stuff like shared governance or committees or whatever, and you're getting flack because this happened to me, like I'm doing committees or whatever, and an informal leader is like, what are you doing that for? Nothing ever happens. It's like, I don't care. Like, what? You've never been on one of these committees. How do you have any idea?
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't care that you think this is lame. I'm still going to do it. You know what I mean? And you know what? I'm going to talk about it positively and openly. I'm not going to be ashamed that I'm doing something I enjoy. It's like, hey, you know what? I went to peer review the other day and it was really good. And I went to shared governance last week and I suggested policy changes and they implemented them. You know?
God, if
Yeah.
only it was that easy.
If only.
Katie had a gift for that. Like
Yeah.
probably nobody else that I ever saw. And that was one of the things, my very first shared governance meeting that I went to, Katie was in charge. And I don't remember what the topic was, but it was like a room full of nurses just going bananas over something negative. And I don't know if it was not getting trays on time
Oh, it
or
was
meds from
probably
pharmacy
not getting trays on
or
time.
whatever. And this chick has like the magic touch. Well, let's spin this around. Let's see, you know, how we can invite, who can we invite to the next meeting to make it better? What are some ideas that you guys have to help improve this? And it's like the room full of silence. And I'm sitting there going, well done. But finally, somebody piped up with a potential solution. And the whole attitude in that room changed.
Mhm.
The whole milieu, I guess.
Nice word, milieu.
Yeah.
I like that word.
It just suddenly it became
No, I
much.
feel intimidated.
I gotta think of a better word to say.
I just, you know, you take this room where everybody's being negative, and I'm just sitting there going like, oh, this is so pointless. And by asking that one question, it kind of shut everybody up and be like, no, you can't just complain. Let's make it better. And it really became a much more positive meeting from then on. And I mean, that was well done. That's something that still stands out, you know, long after Katie has no longer, you know, chair of that in that committee. But, you know, it takes a special person to do that. And when you can be the one to do that, it really improves your credibility. It really changes the culture in the unit at that point. And you'd be surprised at the strength that you can build from that.
Yeah.
I mean, you were still really new, actually, at that point, I think, when you were getting started in shared governance. And the ability to take that and change it the way that you did, it took a lot of guts to sit in a room full of, 30 nurses at least, all
Yeah.
from critical care, med surg. It didn't, I
And
mean,
some of them have been at that facility for
a long
20, 30
time.
years.
And really say, hey, guys.
Sacred cows.
Moo.
Have
Hey,
you
now.
ever heard the sacred cow
Oh yeah.
expression in nursing culture?
don't
I
know
have
that
actually. You
have.
know what? Can you explain that though for people? I have, but can you explain
I
that?
learned about it in college, and it stuck with me to this day. The sacred cows are like the nurses who have been part of the organization for years. They are valued, and I mean literally, they are the queen
Expert.
and kings experts. If you call a doctor and say, I think this is going on with my patient, this, and this is happening, and they're saying, yeah, I don't think so, and then that nurse calls and says the exact same thing, they're gonna be like, you're right, let's get that done.
Yes.
That's they are well respected, and they're sacred.
Mm-hmm.
They are treasured, valued. people,
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
cows, people. But anyway, I love that term.
I do
Like,
too. And
you
it,
know,
but it,
we know who the sacred cow is in our unit. I
but
don't.
you know what? Just because you're a sacred cow doesn't mean they can't be wrong too. Something
Yeah.
about
Right.
people
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
to that point is being able to, admit when you're wrong, and and that doesn't mean getting to a sacred cow status doesn't mean you're perfect. Is what I meant to
No,
say.
not at all.
No, it doesn't. But there's a lot of sacred cows in shared governance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, if you can even just posing, a simple question like, okay, so I hear what you guys are saying, but what are we gonna do to fix it? And then, you want people to feel listened to, because hey, I hear how much it sucks to not have a tray for your patient when you've ordered it 17 times and it's been 28 hours before this patient's eaten or whatever. Like I get that sucks, but instead of spending an hour complaining about it, what are we going to do to fix it? Because we can complain for 20 years, whatever,
Mhm.
but we got to figure out what we're going to do. And if you can just kind of change that and kind of being unapologetically positive. And I think if you're not afraid to be positive in front of people, show that you're not scared to go against the negative grain, because you never know what kind of little impacts that can have. Maybe another nurse started a couple weeks after you and they see, hey, I don't have to be negative to be here. I can be me. I don't have to be crazy positive, but I don't have to be this. I don't have to be whatever I think I have to be to fit into this unit. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
I also think too, if you do develop a friendship with someone that is an informal leader and maybe they are a little negative or maybe they don't know how they're being perceived, talk to them about it. Like, hey man, you were kind of real short with that nurse when you said that. I think that might have been really frustrating. Why don't you go? It might be a good idea to go say something to him.
So there's a quote by Michelle Obama, who's also one of my heroes. You do not have to say anything to the haters. You do not have to acknowledge them at all. You just wake up every morning and be the best you can be, and that tends to shut them up.
Ooh, girl, I like that. And it's about you being you.
We aim high,
Yes.
sisters.
So, I think it's important when you do develop a friendship with someone that an important part of it is being honest with each other. And if someone is being kind of crabby, and let them know, and hopefully they can feel that, because nobody's perfect. Even the positive people have crabby days, and if they said something they shouldn't have or acted like they shouldn't have, creating this culture where it's okay to call each other out is really important.
Yeah.
Being comfortable in the discomfort is essential, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. It's a part of maturity too.
And part of that is being able to be all business. Well, like if your alarms keep going off and you don't address them, I'm going to be all business and say, Melissa, go fix your sat probe. I'm tired of listening to it. Being able to, but there's a way you don't have to have this. I would like to discuss with you your O2 sat probe.
I really had a bad alarm situation the other day. And
Tell me about it.
I can't, because I had my patient was in a certain situation where their blood pressure was just fluctuating all over the place. And so I couldn't I didn't want to raise my high blood pressure alarm, because literally their blood pressure would be up for 30 seconds, then back down.
They were
for
on an art line?
2 minutes. It was an art line. And I know I was driving my coworkers crazy, but
if they know
I
you're
kept
not
going in there and silencing it. It's just, every time that thing beeped, and they were like, it's your patient again.
I will kill you, Elizabeth. No, I think it's important, but then you just communicate. Hey, y'all, I don't want to silence this because I'm worried I'm going to
can't.
miss something.
Right.
I cannot. So I'm sorry we got to kind of deal with this alarm today. Communication. It's, you know what I mean? A lot of this boils down to communication. So it's important to be able to be all business when it comes to that clinical black and white. Actually, I need you to do this kind of thing. Hey, Joanna, I love you, but I've answered the last 19 of your 20 call logs, and I'm losing my mind.
Love that. Answer your lights.
Answer your call lights. I love you, but if I answer one more while you're checking your phone at the desk, I'm gonna scream.
Oh, I start just saying, sounds like bed 3's beeping.
Yeah. Actually, that's something that's kind of like, I guess,
Sounds
the
like
culture.
that's your IV.
Yeah. No, that's what we do, right? And it's not like a sarcastic. It's like, hey, bed 2's beeping. And it's like, oh, okay. And then the person who has bed 2, who's sitting down, goes and addresses.
Yeah.
So, like, if you kind of start,
Right.
that's I love that. Hey, you're beeping. And then if they don't get up and deal with it, hey, you're still beeping in bed 2.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got to go pass some meds. Why don't you check your alarms?
Yeah, but not in the snotty tone, Elizabeth.
Well, I have the quote unquote,
RBF.
oh, the best one ever.
We're not going to define
So-
that. If you want to know what that is, you can just look it up. But we're not going to say what
The
that
grumpy
is.
face. Resting grumpy face.
Resting.
I have the best one. And I can't do anything about it. It's just the way God
It's
made
just
my
the way
face. But people
Yeah.
are like, God, I don't want to ever say anything to you when you come to work 'cause you look like
Really?
you could just kill somebody.
Oh,
Shouldn't
wow.
say that. But they look like even I had a patient's family member a couple weeks ago be like, are you mad at us? And I was like, no. I was like, I'm
This is
really
the way-
worried about something. I'm so sorry. I'm focused. That's what I have to say.
I guess
But-
I know you well when you're focused, so I don't take it personally.
Ugh,
That's important to know, though.
I
'cause
know, but
When you're new coming into a place,
I have to
you
tell
don't
people
realize that that's Elizabeth's concentration
that's
face.
my
Right.
That's not
that's
her
my
angry face.
But that's my face.
Well, and I think that's
Don't
important.
judge me for my grumpy resting face.
So that's the role of the mentor, right? The mentor
Yes.
says, "Hey, you know what? Elizabeth looks grumpy in the morning, but she's usually just like focused, so don't take it personally." Or Katie is painfully
let's
bubby.
just call a spade a spade. That's Stafford. Okay.
Okay, so the mentor says, "Hey, don't take it personally when Staffer. You just gotta wait until 9 a.m. with Melissa.
Right.
9 a.m. is the time that
You can
the-
talk to her.
the lights are on bright and she's ready to go. But before that, don't take it personally." Or Katie's painfully positive, so try not to get annoyed. It's
Don't dump her
okay.
coffee out.
Those kinds of things.
yeah.
So that's how
Don't-
the mentor can help you kind of navigate those relationships and get an idea of that stuff, and don't think it's about you necessarily, right? I think that's important to do. And then and one of the things that I think is I notice consistently when I see negative units is they always think whenever a somebody acts unprofessional or does something they shouldn't, whether it be like alarms or whatever, they always think the manager has to come in and deal with it. But really, we are all professional nurses. We are adults. And if you're doing something that's frustrating me, I need to be an adult and say something to you and not talk about it with the rest of the unit. I don't need to bring the manager in. When I was first starting out, I saw this modeled really well. I saw 2 nurses on night shift that were just like passively making really rude comments to each other. And it was like, are they about to fight? Like, I thought it was about to go down in the nurses' station.
In our
And-
little unit?
No, it was in a different facility. And the charge nurse pulled these 2 together, and they were really not happy. And she was like, "You 2 need to go into the dictation room now and figure this out. We are not doing this." And I was like, dang. So they went in and with someone else went in there and they were, "What are you mad about? What are you mad?" And this was in the middle of a shift. This wasn't like, "Okay, come in on Saturday and we're going to talk about a situation." It was, I'm mad. You're acting like this. And somebody had said an offhanded comment. The other person took it bad. And then more offhanded comments happened. But you know what? 3 hours in the shift or whatever time it was, I sat down. Someone said, "Say why you're mad. Say why you're mad." Oh, okay. And then it was fine. It was squashed. But it was like, I thought I appreciated how that was managed. And they did not bring the manager in. They didn't need to bring someone from above in.
It's
'Cause
almost
had
more
that happened, they would've
counterproductive
been
to do
fired.
that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, it's like I can't even put that to words. Like, if you can't deal with it yourself, I mean, there will be some times when the manager may have to get involved.
Mhm.
That really should not be
No.
required very often.
Mhm.
I mean, we really should be able to have a conversation
That's
and
the
work that out.
exception, not the
Yes.
rule.
Yes, yes.
So if you're frustrated that someone never answers their call lights, then go have a conversation with them. And after you've had a conversation, and maybe if someone else has had a conversation with them as well, and you're still getting consistent insubordination, then you go up.
Because they may not hear them.
I don't believe you.
They
hear them,
Let me
Elizabeth.
just tell you, sometimes those IV pumps are really hard to hear with that door shut.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm talking about like call lights or like kicking it in
my
the nurse's
goodness.
station or in the
My
break room.
preceptor used to get so mad at me, though. I will say this for a new nurse. My preceptor used to get so mad at me because I didn't hear the alarms going off. And she would be like, "Do you not hear that?" And I'm like, "Hear what?" Like, I didn't recognize the alarms.
Mhm.
I don't know what it was about it, but literally she said to me, and when she said it hit home, and I kept it and I use it still to this day. You have to get used to the sounds of your unit.
You do,
Mhm.
and because they do differ.
They
Like
do.
I know we got new IV pumps, and that threw me off a little
Oh,
because
gosh, it still
I'm
throws
used to
me
a
off.
specific IV pump sound, and then a cardiac monitor sound, and the different levels of the cardiac monitor, and the tube feeding, and then the SCD pump, and then when the door is locked in the air negative pressure room, that beep, and the call bell,
Mhm.
and then you forgot to answer at the call bell, you know, like, and the PCA pump and the epidural, like,
Yeah.
to go on and on and on. So there's lots of alarms you do have to learn. And then a couple other things. One of the ones we already kind of went over was don't always assume that someone is being lazy or malicious. Like, I remember going to a unit and they were complaining about the CNA that was super lazy. She never even never even did the Foley or emptied the Foleys. And then she was with me one day, that CNA, and I was like, "You want me to show you how to do that?" She was like, "Yeah," because she was emptying the Foley incorrectly and therefore putting the output on the chart incorrectly. So all the other nurses, I don't want to say all, but the other nurses that she spoke to me about said that they just said, "No, I'll just do it myself." And then I would hear those nurses complaining about this CNA that wouldn't do her work. But it's because she didn't know how, and they didn't take the time to explain it to her. And she was like, "I just want to say thank you for explaining this to me because I've been working here for 2 years and I've asked and people just say, I'll just do it myself." And so it's like, she wasn't being lazy. She wanted to know the right way to do it, but everyone talked about her like she was lazy in that aspect.
Mhm.
So I want to encourage you not to assume things. My last point is to be quick to admit you're wrong. So set an example of it being okay to be wrong and not be perfect. Many times, mean and negative coworkers set this unrealistic example of what they expect people to be like. So showing fault or flaw in themselves is one of those like unthinkable, unimaginable things, because they have to maintain their reputation, that tough exterior, and admitting they're wrong in front of other people is no bueno. So and fear is really just, they're scared, you know? So if you can take all the power away from that by making it okay to be wrong and ask for help. And if you model that mentality consistently and say, "I screwed this up. Can you show me how to do this?" As opposed to like on the sly looking it up and trying to like avoid people from knowing when you've messed up. That really shifts the mentality, shifts the culture slowly, but it happens. It'll take a long time for someone maybe who has that negative and tough exterior to really soften. But doing those little actions really help. So just to kind of review, did you guys have anything else you wanted to add about that before I do a quick summary?
I don't think so. I don't really think so. I mean, I think that with all of these things, communication is important.
Yeah.
And whether that be a direct verbal communication or body language or what have you, I mean, being aware of, excuse me, being aware of what you see other people doing and being aware of what you're doing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's there's a lot of observation and back and forth, self-evaluation, and, don't always put everything on everybody else. Own some of that yourself too. So
Love it. So quick summary: observe the unit, self-reflect, empathize, be outside of the negativity and not within it. The practical high level tips: when you start to see people being negative, don't participate. When people start talking negatively, talk positively. Learn something about the informal leaders that they enjoy that is not negative and spark up conversation about it. Be unapologetic about being positive. If you start to get close to an informal leader and call them out when they're being negative, as an accountability thing. Be all business when it's that black and white clinical stuff and call each other out and make that culture and that climate normal and okay. And I forgot to say earlier, the important aspect is when I call you out, I don't treat you differently. Hey, Melissa, I'm gonna need you to answer those call outs or I'm gonna lose my mind. So what are you getting for lunch today? Like not treating or not shunning that person, not treating them, because people, when they get corrected, they are worried that people think that they're stupid and that they're going to get shunned and they're not part of the team anymore. And it's important that we maintain that. Only bring a manager in when it's absolutely necessary. Don't assume someone's all purposefully being lazy or malicious, and be quick to admit when you're wrong. All right, guys, so that completes our episode on dealing with a negative unit culture, bullies, and confrontation. Check out freshrn.com for more blog posts and podcasts and lots of great resources. Thanks, nurses. Stay fresh.
Damn girl, better hit the floor. All the other fellas better run for the door. Stop, drop, and roll with me.